They put a general in handcuffs and smiled while doing it. Two local police officers in Arlington stopped Evelyn Hayes, a calm, middle-aged black woman, as she stepped out of her sedan for coffee. They saw her confidence, her poise, and mistook it for defiance. Without reason, they twisted her arms behind her back and forced her against the hood of her own car. They thought she'd break. But when they picked Evelyn Hayes, they didn't know who they were messing with. They didn't know she was a decorated U.S. Army Brigadier General, just hours removed from a top-level mission briefing at the Pentagon, and they certainly didn't expect the call she was about to make, one that would end both of their careers. What came next wasn't just justice. It was exposure, swift and undeniable. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you're watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because the story you're about to hear isn't just about one woman. It's about all of us. Sunlight drifted through the morning haze as Evelyn stood silently on the sidewalk, wrists bound, head unbowed. The city kept moving, unaware that history was unfolding in a quiet parking lot, where dignity met injustice and refused to yield. It was a quiet Tuesday morning in Arlington, Virginia, the kind where sunlight slips gently through maple leaves and the world feels almost decent. Dr. Evelyn Hayes, a tall, composed woman in her late 50s, stepped out of her dark green sedan to grab a coffee before her briefing at the Capitol. Dressed in simple slacks and a blazer, she looked like any other professional in D.C. Except Evelyn wasn't just any woman. She was a retired Army Brigadier General and now served as a top intelligence advisor. But none of that mattered the moment two local officers spotted her pulling into the lot. They watched her exit her vehicle, whispered to each other. One of them, young, cocky, walked toward her with his hand already resting on his belt. "Ma'am," he said curtly, "we've had reports of a suspicious vehicle in the area. We're going to need to ask you a few questions." Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "Suspicious?" she asked, calm but firm. "Is there a reason you're approaching me with your hand on your taser?" That was all it took. The other officer swooped in. "Stop resisting," he barked, though she hadn't moved. They grabbed her wrists, twisted her arms, and before anyone nearby could react, the sound of cold metal snapping around her bones filled the air. The handcuffs clicked shut. She didn't cry out, she didn't plead. She just stood still, lips tight, eyes forward. Around her, people began to gather. Some pulled out phones, others just stared. The silence was heavy, like waiting for thunder after lightning. And then Evelyn spoke, her voice low, even, and sharp as a blade. "You have no idea who you've just handcuffed." Pause here a moment. What would you have done standing in her shoes? Restrained, humiliated, judged not for your actions but for your skin? There are moments in life when your dignity is tested, not in war, but in stillness. And in that stillness, Evelyn didn't break. She began to rise. Evelyn Hayes had seen war zones, real ones. She'd led battalions through sandstorms, briefed presidents behind closed doors, and held her ground in rooms where every word could shift global tides. But nothing prepared her for the absurdity of standing handcuffed beside her car, treated like a criminal for simply being black in a clean suit behind the wheel of a nice sedan. The younger officer circled her car now, eyes sharp with suspicion but empty of reason. "Whose car is this?" he asked, as though the name on the registration might tell him more than her military ID ever could. "It's mine," Evelyn replied with clipped dignity. "Would you like to see the title, or are you just searching for excuses?" That tone, confident, unapologetic, only made things worse. He slammed the door shut and muttered to his partner, "She fits the description. Female, mid-50s, possibly armed." It was a lie, spoken aloud like truth. And the worst part, no one stopped them. The taller officer stepped closer. "Ma'am, we've had some vehicle thefts in the area. You're not being arrested, just detained for questioning." "But I'm already in cuffs," she said quietly. Her hands were swelling now, bruises blooming beneath the metal. Still, her voice remained even. This wasn't about her car, or any stolen report. This was about presence, about power, about a woman who didn't flinch when men in uniforms felt entitled to control her. Have you ever felt completely invisible and yet utterly exposed all at once? Homed with her family. A crowd had gathered. Some whispered, others filmed. One teenage girl looked on, tears forming in the corners of her eyes. Evelyn saw it, and, for a flicker of a second, her heart cracked. Not for herself, but for every young soul learning what it means to be judged without justice. She turned back to the officers. "You're making a mistake," she said, her voice like flint. They laughed, but the storm was coming. The cuffs bit deeper as Evelyn shifted her weight, blood pulsing against cold steel. The sun was climbing now, baking the sidewalk, drawing sweat from her brow, but still she stood tall, quiet, watchful. Years and command had trained her to wait for the right moment, and that moment had come. "I need to make a call," she said, eyes fixed on the older officer. He scoffed. "You're not calling anyone, you're being detained." "I'm a federal officer," she replied, slow and precise, "and you are detaining me illegally." The younger cop gave a little chuckle, the kind that always comes before cruelty. "Lady, I don't care if you're the Queen of England, you're not special." That was the final mistake. Evelyn turned her head toward the bystanders, scanning for a steady hand. Her eyes met a man holding a phone, middle-aged, wearing a Washington Nationals cap. Fear and concern flickered on his face. "You?" she said calmly. "Yes, you in the red shirt. I need you to dial a number. Memorize this. Echo 79 line 2. Secure line, Pentagon." The man hesitated, glancing at the officers. "Do it now," Evelyn urged. "They're violating federal law." He punched in the numbers, trembling. The phone rang once, twice. Then came a crisp, calm voice. "Pentagon Security, state your clearance." Evelyn raised her voice, clear and commanding. "This is Brigadier General Evelyn Hayes, ID 48A 9122. I am currently being unlawfully detained by 2 officers in Arlington, badge numbers 5307 and 5304. I request immediate confirmation of their authority." Time froze. The laughter stopped. The smirks vanished. The older officer's mouth opened, but no sound came. For the first time, doubt crept in, like a shadow behind their eyes. Can you imagine what it feels like to shift the ground beneath men who thought they owned it? Then from the phone speaker, "We have you, General. Stay on the line." It was no longer a routine stop. It was an incident. And Evelyn Hayes had just flipped the entire system on its head. The phone line stayed open, pulsing with silence. Then, like thunder rolling in, a voice cut through. "General Hayes, hold position. Local units are being notified. Do not engage further." Evelyn said nothing. She didn't need to. She had done her part. Now the machine she once helped build was moving for her. The 2 officers were frozen, stone still, like statues in the wrong place at the wrong time. Their radios crackled. Then another voice, louder this time, filled the air. "All units in the 200 block of Greenleaf Avenue stand down. Repeat, stand down. Officer misidentification. Do not interfere further." And just like that, the balance of power shifted. The taller officer stepped back, his hand twitching near his holster. What's going on?" he mumbled. The younger one, red-faced now, said nothing. The arrogance was gone, burned away by the weight of the uniform Evelyn once wore, more honorably than they ever would. 2 black SUVs appeared at the corner. No sirens, no flash, silent authority. Evelyn felt the pressure of the cuffs ease, metal finally giving way to freedom. The taller officer unlocked them with trembling hands. We didn't know," he stuttered. She held his gaze. "That's the problem. Sometimes justice arrives not with fists, but with clarity. Do you think an apology can fix a humiliation broadcast to a crowd, or erase the bruise beneath a general's sleeve?" One of the agents from the SUV approached her, salute sharp, words quiet. "Ma'am, the secretary is standing by. The chief of police is en route." Evelyn nodded, brushing her sleeve down, reclaiming her dignity, not through rage, but through steadiness. Then she turned toward the crowd, toward the girl still holding her phone. Tears now dried, and gave the faintest nod. Not of victory, of grace. What does it take to keep your soul intact when the world tries to break it? Evelyn knew, and she was far from done. Evelyn didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She stood calmly as the agents flanked her, no longer a suspect, but a symbol. A woman who had been doubted, restrained, and nearly erased, now standing as the one person in the entire block whose authority no one questioned. The two officers, now pale and silent, watched her like men awaiting sentencing. Evelyn turned toward them slowly, her gaze steady, her voice razor sharp. "I want both of their personnel records audited. Every traffic stop, every complaint, every moment they pulled that badge and made someone feel small." The agent beside her nodded without hesitation and stepped aside to relay the order. "You treated me like a threat," she continued, now speaking directly to the officers. "But the only danger here was your ignorance and your arrogance." The older cop tried to speak. "We didn't mean—" "No," Evelyn cut in, her tone cool. "You meant every part of it. That's what makes it worse." There was no shouting, no vengeance, only facts delivered with quiet steel. Can a person ever recover from being stripped of their dignity in public? By sundown, both officers had been suspended, pending investigation. Their badge numbers were being reviewed by internal affairs and flagged by military liaison units. By Friday morning, official misconduct charges would be filed. The union could only do so much when the Pentagon itself was watching. Justice didn't arrive in a headline, it arrived in a consequence. Evelyn returned to her vehicle, the same sedan they'd questioned her for. She opened the door slowly, calmly, as if to remind the world that she would do it on her terms now. And as she looked back over her shoulder toward the crowd and the chaos left behind, her eyes met the same girl from earlier. Evelyn offered the smallest smile, a reminder. We don't rise by rage. We rise by refusing to bow. Have you ever stood up simply by refusing to bend? Evelyn had. The next morning, Washington buzzed with the story. News anchors used words like unprecedented and shameful. Footage played on every screen. 2 officers being walked out of the precinct, heads down, handcuffs clicking in rhythm with justice. And beside those images stood one name, repeated with awe and respect. General Evelyn Hayes. But Evelyn didn't watch the news. She was already walking into the Pentagon. Her stride was calm, measured. Security guards stood straighter as she passed. Colleagues nodded, not just out of courtesy, but reverence. Not because she had power, but because she had used it wisely. Her aide, a young lieutenant, jogged to catch up. "Ma'am, are you sure you want to work today?" Evelyn paused at the elevator. "Do you stop showing up when the world doubts you?" she asked gently. He shook his head, quieted. Inside the elevator, alone, Evelyn allowed herself a breath. Not of relief, but of recognition. Of what it meant to be seen and heard in a country still learning how to listen. Have you ever held your head high, not because things were fair, but because your soul refused to be bowed? As the elevator doors opened, she walked into the bright hallway of classified briefings and quiet decisions. Back to her work. back to serving a nation that, just yesterday, had nearly forgotten who she was. But she hadn't forgotten herself. She passed a mounted plaque near the briefing room entrance, one that read, "Freedom is earned, then defended, every day." That morning, Evelyn wasn't just defending intelligence reports or foreign strategies. She was defending the truth that dignity is not something others give you, it's something you claim, hold, and carry, even when the world tries to take it. And as she sat at the head of the table, briefing a room full of powerful men and women, no one questioned her place. Because they finally understood, she hadn't just outranked two officers. She had outranked prejudice itself. Sometimes, dignity doesn't raise its voice. It simply stands its ground. Evelyn Hayes didn't shout, threaten, or fight back with anger. She responded with calm, with truth, and with the quiet strength of someone who knows exactly who she is. Her story reminds us that the world may still judge people by the surface, their skin, their gender, their silence. But beneath all that, character speaks louder. Many of us have lived long enough to know injustice when we see it. We've felt overlooked, underestimated, or treated unfairly. And yet, like Evelyn, we learn that real power isn't always about pushing back. It's about standing firm in who we are. You don't need a uniform or a title to deserve respect. You just need to remember your worth. So if you've ever been dismissed, ignored, or made to feel small, let this story remind you, your story isn't over, and your strength hasn't gone unnoticed. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is to simply keep showing up, with our head high, our heart steady, and our spirit unshaken. She didn't need applause. Evelyn Hayes walked out of that parking lot with her dignity intact, not because someone gave it back, but because they never truly took it. Her strength wasn't loud. It was the kind that breathes through stillness, that endures humiliation without surrendering identity. That's the quiet power most people never see, but never forget. In the days that followed, policies were reviewed, records unsealed, and names remembered. Not just hers, but every person whose story never reached a camera. Evelyn didn't just reclaim justice for herself. She lit a path for those who come next. The sting of racism doesn't vanish in a moment, but it echoes, and with each telling, it weakens. What we do with those echoes is up to us. If this story stayed with you, share it. Subscribe to Echoes of Racism so these voices don't fade into silence. In the meantime, I've chosen two stories I think will move you just as much. Take care, and we'll see you soon.